In today's video, we have all kinds of NHL news to take a look at, including some trade rumors involving the Ottawa Senators, as well as the New York Rangers, Montreal Canadiens, and another Columbus Blue Jackets prospect seems unhappy and might welcome a change. Plus, we have big news regarding Patrik Laine, who's going to be away from the Blue Jackets for an extended period of time. More news from the NHL waiver wire, and the first of the 2018 World Junior players that are going to be facing charges on the sexual assault allegations in London, Ontario, has surrendered to police. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have tons of news and some rumors to take a look at today. I'm going to kick off today's episode by talking about, again, unfortunately, the news from the 2018 World Junior team. An unfortunate story that's been dragging on for an extended period of time. And to be completely honest, I think it's going to be a long time before we reach the actual end. And we know everything that we need to know. We know what kind of justice is the victim going to get? What kind of punishments are the players going to be facing? Will they be found innocent? All those things we don't know yet. And this is kind of like, I would say, the best way to describe it is, I think Jeff Merrick probably said it best, where it's like it's kind of like a new beginning, if you will. So it's like the end of the beginning, and now we're kind of beginning a new phase in this whole story and scandal. So we get the news today, which was again by Robin Doolittle of the Globe and Mail, that former Ottawa Senator Alex Formenton has surrendered to London police. So of course at this point we know that there's 5 players, including 4 currently in the NHL, and then there's Alex Formenton, who was playing in the Swiss League, who are on leave from their clubs. For mostly most of the things that were revealed during those leave of absences were for personal reasons. Calgary Flames forward Dylan Dubé, that was mentioned that he was going to be seeking professional mental health, I believe, help, is what I believe they were saying. So it wasn't exactly as brief as the others. So until these players surrender themselves to police, we cannot definitively say they are the 5 that the police in London want to speak to and plan on laying charges on. But we can say that about Alex Formenton now. He has a fairly high-profile legal team, criminal lawyers that he's hired, and they put out a brief statement to media, just kind of confirming, because there was obviously pictures, and I'll show you here on the screen from the Globe and Mail, of him going to surrender. Obviously that he vows to defend his innocence, and he certainly wants everybody to stop short of assuming that all these players are guilty, and wants them to have a proper opportunity to defend themselves. So it sounds like, I kind of often wondered as we go through this process and as we get closer to getting more information like we've had here in the past few days, would the players, if they got to this point that charges were laid, and obviously they are laid, are they going to consider a plea deal? We've already seen Hockey Canada settle this case out of court. Could we see that happen again? So that I guess doing a plea deal kind of makes it look like you're guilty because you're, from a perspective, but at the same time, you're not found guilty, right? So you're kind of settling out of court. It doesn't sound like that's going to happen. I know based on comments from the alleged victim side of things, it sounds like they're prepared to go through a lengthy trial. Based on these statements from the lawyers of Alex Formenton, certainly sounds like he's prepared to defend his innocence, like he said. So clearly, I think this could be something that drags on a long time. We know how the criminal court system works in Canada. It's not exactly a quick process. Obviously, charges are going to be laid. We're going to have an announcement or a press conference of sorts from the London police on February the 5th. It's quite likely between now and then, as these players come forward and surrender, that we very well will likely get word through the media on the fact that they've done so. I'm not sure they can do so without kind of escaping somebody knowing about it. So we'll have to wait and see where that goes. But Formenton is the first of the 5 players that we publicly know are indeed facing charges. I know based on the Globe and Mail's article, it does indicate that depending on, because they did not confirm exactly what the charges were. I believe there's different types of sexual assault that they can be charged with. I believe sexual assault on its own brings a maximum of 10 years of prison time if they're found guilty. And there is another charge that can be laid, which is gang sexual assault, which can be an additional, and I think it's another 4 years. I think it's a maximum of 14 years. And it was also confinement charges can be laid as well. So if they deem that she was kind of held against her will, that can be a separate additional charge. So we'll have to see exactly what they're charged with. And based on comments from some high-profile lawyers in these articles from between the Globe and Mail and Rick Westhead of TSN, sometimes charges can be laid and then the charges can kind of be upgraded before we get to the, the actual trial. So we'll have to see where that goes. But we now officially know one player at least, which is, like I said, a player that a lot of people suspected for a long time, given the fact that the Ottawa Senators basically just refused to sign him out of the blue when his contract was up. He was one of the few players in that predicament where they had like just the contract expired right after the story came out in the summer of, I guess it would have been 2022. So yeah, anyways, here we are. Alex Formenton officially surrenders to London police. The other fairly big story we got today is Patrick Laine. A lot of people didn't see this coming. We know Patrick Laine obviously dealing with an injury. We had heard a few days back that he had a bit of a setback, and now he's going to be out longer because Patrick Laine is entering the NHL Player Assistance Program. Now, Laine himself has put out a statement on his Instagram, so you can see the full statement, essentially saying that he needs some time to go work on his mental health. So he confirms for us in his statement essentially what's going on with him and what he plans to work on and what he's seeking help for. Obviously, it's a confidential program. We don't need to know. If players want to tell us, they're welcome to, but not required by any means. So Laine has full support of the Blue Jackets. And so he's going to be out for an extended time. There's no timetable on that. Normally, most players that go through that program, it's usually at least 30 days, because most programs take that long before most therapists will be comfortable saying that you're prepared and ready to go back and compete and play. So we'll see, but we certainly want to wish Patrick Laine all the best. I hope he gets the help he's looking for, can make some progress, and hopefully come back and play hockey a much more healthy, confident person, and can be productive like he was in his early days with the Winnipeg Jets, because he was a heck of a dynamic player, and obviously the last few years haven't been quite as good to him. And if this is what he needs to help find that, then I certainly hope it works and is successful and things improve for him in that regard, both for his health and lifestyle on and off the ice. Some other news today as well. We have some news from the NHL waiver wire. One is for the purpose of being reassigned, and one's for the purpose of a contract being terminated. The Winnipeg Jets today placed Declan Chisholm on waivers. They do need to make room on their roster for returning Mark Scheifele, so I assume that's the main reason to send Declan Chisholm down to the minors. And the Montreal Canadiens have defenseman Nikolai Baudin, who's been playing with their Laval team. He is on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. So we already heard before. I talked about it on the channel a number of weeks back, that he was very unhappy with his playing time in the minors. At one point, he was a Chicago Blackhawks draft pick and prospect, and we had seen, I can't remember exactly when it was, within the last year, Montreal and Chicago completed a trade, swapping prospects that were not kind of meeting expectations or not working out for them, and they both got to change the scenery and see if they could, work things out. So Baudin went down to the Laval Rocket, and then things kind of fell out of favor. Basically, I think they're favoring some of their defensemen that are just a little younger that they've drafted and developed. They do have a lot of young D in their system, which also doesn't bode well. They had given Baudin time away from the team as well to compete. I believe it was in the Swiss tournament over there as well, the Spengler Cup, if I'm not mistaken. I think he went over with Team Canada. So at the end of the day, things are just not working out. He's not getting the playing time. He wasn't happy, so they mutually agreed to terminate the contract. He will become an unrestricted free agent. He can sign with any other NHL or other pro hockey team wherever he can find himself the best opportunity. There's also lots of other players, of course, getting reassigned today because some of their teams are getting closer to the All-Star break. Some teams won't play again until after, and some obviously have a number of days off here coming up. So, for example, we've seen the Wild demote Jesper Wallstedt and Jake Lucchini. The Flames sent Coronado, Klopka, and Schwint all down to the minors as well. And there's a number of other cases like that around the league. So if you've seen players being demoted, it doesn't really mean anything personal against the player. It's just a case of they're being sent down so they can continue playing while their team has an extended break here because of the All-Star festivities coming up. The Rangers, for example, also sent back Jake Leschyshyn and Connor Mackey, who came up to play against Ottawa yesterday. Another update as well from player safety. We had another fine today. Vancouver Canuck defenseman Tyler Myers has been fined just over $5,000 for an elbow that occurred against the Columbus Blue Jackets the night before against forward Sean Kuraly. It was kind of a weird scenario as well. There was actually a major penalty on the play, and it ended up getting reviewed. When the penalty was reviewed, they actually rescinded one penalty and called a penalty on a completely different player. It's kind of weird, but Myers being that guy, it was an odd scenario for sure, but player safety felt that the elbow to Kuraly was a bit reckless and warrants additional discipline, so a $5,000 fine is indeed what we have here. Now, as I mentioned, the Rangers not only sent down Connor Mackey and Jake Leschyshyn today, but some other news from the Rangers organizations. We had a statement just a short time ago from the team, and of course a response from Chytil himself confirming that centerman Filip Chytil is going to be done for the rest of the year. Now, we had seen that he, of course, had gone to Europe and had only been back in North America with the Rangers just a few days when there was a bit of an accident at morning skate and he had a hard fall, and we knew he kind of probably re-injured or had some setbacks. We don't know the full extent of it. This was only in the past couple of days here over the weekend, and now they've confirmed that after reviewing everything, that the team and players determined it's in his best interest to shut it down for the season. So he hopes and plans to be recovered and healthy and ready to go for next year in training camp. But right now, that's a big hole in their lineup. So obviously that's going to create a larger pool of long-term injured reserve funds that the New York Rangers can certainly tap into if they want to make any trades. That's another contract they can spend above the cap. So as much as they hate to lose the player, with all the rumors circulating about what they may do at the deadline, it certainly does help them flexibility-wise that way. But they'd probably just as soon get their own player back so they don't have to go out and make an acquisition here. So because of that, there is lots of rumors that the Rangers are certainly looking for help at center. Obviously, that's a position that Chytil plays. They were already kind of looking for a depth center as it was, and now they want somebody who can maybe play a little higher in the lineup. Last night on NHL's Sportsnet broadcast for Hockey Night in Canada, the Saturday headline segment with Elliotte Friedman, where he usually dishes all his latest rumors, Friedman talked about the fact that the Rangers appear to be interested in Montreal Canadiens center Sean Monahan. Now, of course, Monahan's having himself a really good campaign. He's managed to stay fairly healthy this year and is putting up good point production. His salary is not huge right now because he did get re-signed by the Montreal Canadiens in the offseason, of course. He originally came to the Habs last year on an expiring deal, but the plan was to flip him because he came in the beginning of the year. The plan was to let him hopefully recover because he had gone through extensive surgery and rehab with the Flames and never really got back to playing much, but he was obviously healthy at the time of the deal and had a pretty good campaign with Montreal, but then well before the deadline got hurt and they couldn't move him. So they agreed to redo a one-year contract and with the purpose of likely getting him to a contending team by March's trade deadline. So the Rangers are going to be a number of teams, one of many that are going to be interested in this player. There's no doubt. Like I said, he's capable of playing second line, third line, depending on where you need him. I think on a really deep contending team, he's a number 3. Some teams he could be a number 2. It just depends. But if he can be a number 2, then you're probably not deep enough to win the cup, in my opinion. So teams like the Rangers, where he could likely be a number 3, might be a better fit for Monahan. He can be a defensively solid two-way guy, good on faceoffs. He's got lots of experience. He's a goal-scoring, shot-first mentality type of center. So obviously, this is a player the Rangers do like. It's not a secret there. I don't know what they would be looking to give up or willing to give up for the Montreal Canadiens. Certainly looking for probably a younger player who can come back and help the Habs sooner than later. I would suspect they're probably not wanting to deal any of their top young players, whether it be Will Cooley or Brennan Othman or Lafreniere, but obviously Lafreniere's a little bit more, finally having a better campaign. There's been some rumors about Capo Caco, but I don't know that the Rangers really want to do that just yet either. If they do trade any of those young players, I would think that would be more of a summer deal involved if a bigger package comes along on something that they feel is going to make the team better. But obviously, in the case of Monahan, they have lots of other pieces there in New York that might help the Rangers. Now, of course, Elliotte Friedman did make mention that given the the past history of Jeff Gorton with the Rangers, that they may not be on the greatest terms between he and Chris Drury and the other members of the front office of New York. So it may be a complicated trade if indeed it does happen. But Monahan is one of the top players on the Rangers' radar here. I've seen some rumblings that the Rangers might be willing to move K'Andre Miller. I would highly doubt that would be the case. It would have to be a blockbuster deal where they get a mega player in return. I think they're pretty high on Miller in the future here. I mean, clearly you see Fox and Lindgren and Trouba and Miller being your top four for a while. So I'd be surprised if they did want to move Miller. I don't think it's something they want to do, but he is popping up on some NHL Insiders trade bait boards, but I don't really see him being a piece that any team's going to be able to grab for a rental player. Now, there is some belief as well that some teams that Montreal has talked to for Monahan might be interested in a contract extension, and the Habs might prefer that because obviously if they go and move Monahan with an extension, then he's going to be there longer. They can ask for a bigger return price. So we'll see. But add the Rangers to the list of teams that are interested in the Habs centerman. We also got news, as I mentioned before, about the Columbus Blue Jackets having another top prospect that's unhappy. This has unfortunately been a trend with this organization. I mean, we've seen, he's not a top prospect. We've seen how unhappy Elvis Merzlikins was, and he wanted out, and how things have settled down a little bit here as of late. So he may stay a little bit longer, but a deal would be complicated for sure. We've seen other young talent like Kent Johnson get sent down to the minors, which was puzzling. Some of their Russian prospects as well were considering heading back home. So they've had a hard time. And now top defensive prospect David Jiricek isn't real happy either after speaking with Aaron Portzline of The Athletic, who covers the Blue Jackets on the beat writer side of things. He interviewed Jiricek, and he clearly wasn't happy. I mean, he's been a player that you've seen go up and down between the minors and the NHL, and a lot of the times when he's been called up, he hasn't even barely been used. So essentially, he says he feels like he's an NHL player. He sees other guys from his draft class getting what he feels are fair opportunities, looking at guys like Nemec and Korchinski, for example. They're getting not only opportunities to play and getting regular minutes, but they're getting power play time. He feels he's just as good as them, and he's not getting equal opportunity here. He's unhappy with being called up and not being played and not being used. He says the NHL staff, so this would likely be the coaching staff with the Jackets, advised him that the last time he did play in the NHL, that it simply wasn't good enough. And he's looking for some positive reinforcements instead of just negative feedback. And when he was sent down most recently here in the last day or so, there was concern that he might decide that he doesn't want to go. He might not report to AHL Cleveland, and that he could either go back to Europe or just ask the team for a trade. And that has not happened, but there was some concern that it could. Like I said before, between the way Pascal Vincent's handling some of these younger players and how we're seeing Jarmo Kekalainen handle this roster, at what point is ownership going to step in here and just clean house? They honestly need a complete fresh start, in my opinion. I really thought Pascal Vincent was going to be a better coach. I mean, I know I've seen what he did in junior. I've seen what he's done as an assistant in the NHL. Well-respected guy. First time as a head coach. I know he got it under odd circumstances given the Mike Babcock situation early in training camp before the season started, but Vincent's just making a lot of really odd moves, in my opinion, and ruffling players the wrong way. And then, like I said, you've got management there who's been there a long time and haven't accomplished anything, and this team is struggling. At one point, are we going to get a complete regime change? And I do wonder if that's coming really soon. Like, how long can they let it go on there before ownership intervenes? I would be really upset if one of my top, most highly drafted recent prospects here kind of forces his way out of town after not even getting a fair chance to be a regular yet. That would be extremely frustrating for sure. So we'll see where that goes. And the other big piece of news on the Saturday headline segment last night from Elliot Friedman on Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada, talking about how the Ottawa Senators and Steve Staios and Dave Poulin are looking for pros, as they keep putting it. They want some more veteran experience to mix in with the young Senators players, guys who they said can play the right way, are responsible, good on and off the ice, good leadership values, and just guys that are not necessarily good people, but good players too. Like, they want good pros. Like the NHL has seen the Ottawa Senators really struggle with their pro scouts in the last few years. We've seen a lot of fill-in players brought in as these young players have been slowly graduating into bigger roles, and the old regime with Pierre Dorion and his very thin staff really piss poor job when it comes to adding pros. They've really not been good at all. Let's look at Jonas Korpisalo, who was their big free agent signing last year. Arguably the worst goaltender in the NHL this year. And you can say what you want about the Senators and their lack of success this year. There was a lot of excuses early on about the team not playing better defense. In the last 15 to 20 games, they've played a lot better defensively, and they're still not getting as many wins as they should, because when they do play better defensively, they're still not getting the saves. You can point to every game pretty much that Korpisalo's been in, and there's at least 1 to 2 really bad goals every time. He'll make an amazing save that's like going to be on highlight reels for the rest of the year, and then he'll let in the biggest softie you've ever seen. It's extremely weird in how it goes back and forth. Bizarre. But clearly an area of struggle for this franchise for way too long. Steve Staios has made enough comments to suggest he certainly feels that way too. And the big name, though, that was linked to the Senators by Friedman was Chris Tanev. Now, based on what they could use in their blue line, he said a guy like Tanev makes a ton of sense. Yes, he's in his early 30s, still has enough to give in the next few years, and he could be a great addition. He's a right shot. He's a good leader, very much a guy who's helped a lot of younger D during his time as a veteran defenseman in this league. So certainly somebody who could play really on any of your top 3 pairs. You could play some anywheres, and he could stabilize things back there. That's probably the best type of thing they could get, is another stabilized defenseman. But he is a pending UFA with Calgary. A couple of things that were mentioned as, potential complications is the fact that Tanev, if he's going to be traded before the deadline, which is highly likely, he may prefer to go to a team that's, a contender, not necessarily a team that's looking towards next year. But at the same time, from Ottawa's perspective, he's almost like a perfect fit. Like I said, he's right shot. He's a veteran. He's a good leader. Plays the hard way, the right way, a way that you can get a lot of respect from your teammates. And he's exactly what they want to add to this team. But they're not going to make that trade unless they can talk to him about extending for a few more years. And clearly, we don't know, based on what Friedman's knowledge is here, if he wants to do that. Like Friedman was saying, makes a lot of sense from Ottawa's standpoint. He'd be perfect. But will he want to go and stay there? That's something that we do not know. Maybe it's a case where he gets traded somewhere else. If he doesn't sign, maybe the Ottawa Senators revisit on the UFA market in July. Either way, he'd make a ton of sense for the Sens. Great fit, but will that be what he wants? Because ultimately, they're not going to do it unless he agrees to sign and extend for at least a couple of extra seasons. So we'll see where that goes. But the Sens are linked to Tanev, and we'll see if they can pull it off. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comment section. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.